Well, hello everyone. Welcome to Open Mic Night. Now, I am not able to come, but I am sending you uh, this little entry. Now, while I am talking to you, I am going to have to get into my Southern accent so you can understand the life I came from and what this story means. So, I grew up on a farm, and this farm, these are my grandparents, and this is the part of the story. Now, this is my grandfather, and oops, there he is. This is my grandfather, and he sits on this porch every day. That is where especially in the summer, it's the only place you get a breeze out there. And this is a location specific story. Notice that this is where we park the cars. This is a long driveway that you go up, and right behind my grandfather is the doghouse. Now, I'm about to share with you a story. So, for those of you who know my sister, I have been keeping this secret for over 40 years. So, if you know my sister, please, please, if you would, do not reveal the secret because you and I are going to share this in our heart. It's a piece of gold that I was planning on revealing never. So, this is what I call the 5G story. This is the story of the goose, the girl, the grandma, Gigi the dog, and Grandpa. So, what happens? Well, my sister, who's still alive and lives just down the road now, she bought a house truly up the road on the country road. Now, we come from a town that is unincorporated. So there's nothing there. The main town at the end of the road was a ghost town. So we are the only people in that area, and we are on 48 acres. So that is a key item. So my sister, bless her heart, she came back with three little kids and moved in with my grandma on the farm. And she went back to school. She needed a high school education. So it happened to be that she was late. So she grabbed the truck and peeled out as quick as she could so she could get to high school, even though she was a grown woman with three children. And she ran over my grandfather's favorite goose. Now, there's some things you should know about my grandfather. He is Norwegian proud. He played very brutal hockey with the Canadians in the 40s and the 50s. So he is veteran proud. He is small town proud. He is dime store proud. He is a traumatic brain injury proud. He fell through a roof. I watched a tractor run over his head. He came up just like, oh, okay, I'm fine. I watched a tractor roll over him. I watched him fall, not put it into gear, and all of us kids across the way watched the tractor run over Grandpa. And it was soft soil, and it just ran over his head. And he just got up and went, "Hi, we're okay. We're okay." So he's that kind of man. He's the kind of man that doesn't say much. He, on a cold winter day when we go out and milk the cows, he would just get up at 4 in the morning. He'd make himself a pot of coffee on the hot stove that's cooked. We had a wood stove that kept us there. And he's the type of man that would always get up at 4 in the morning. He would make himself a pot of coffee that looked like mud. And he would just pour a little Christian Brothers in there, little liquid courage to get him out to that barn and go sing to those cows. Now, my grandfather loved this goose, and this goose was mean. It had a little tongue that came out. It was terrifying. It was terrifying. That same goose, when my nephew was going to take a little whiz outside on the flowers, because that's how they potty trained him at age 3, is they said, why don't you just go take it when you got to take a leak? Why don't you go water the flowers? And the goose caught his little wee wee. It was terrible. We all had reasons to hate that goose. We had a goose stick next to the door so that if you had to go out past that goose's territory, which the goose was happy to live with the dogs, the dog, the dogs, they lived out in the doghouse. That little middle area was their running ground. But you had to go past that middle area to get to every barn, every animal, everything you had to do. You had to pass that goose. So they were in the way. Susan was in a hurry. My sister just spun out and she felt it. And that's when she became a murderer. That she went, oh my, and she killed it good. She killed it good. I mean, she was in a hurry. And dang it, of course, when you're in a hurry, you got to kill the thing you never need to kill. It's Grandpa's favorite goose. And that goose was mean. It sort of earned it. I think that it's karma coming back to just run it over. And it died quick. It died quick. Susan gets out of the truck, sees that she's killed the goose, and she's still in a hurry. She got to get to school. So she picks up the dead goose and throws it into the doghouse. And then she drives to school praying, praying, just thinking about the fact she's now a murderer. And that woman has never killed a thing with a car in her life. And she gets to school and she does what every good citizen would do. She calls my grandmother to be an accomplice. And my grandmother picks up the phone and hears the story and says, well, I better get out right now before he comes out and sees it. So my grandmother runs out, goes into the doghouse, and the goose is gone. Now, it only takes 15 minutes to drive to town. So in 15 minutes, that goose is gone. And that means 1 + 1, goose, dead goose, chicken killer. She looked to who is the most murderous dog ever, and she knows that she's caught Gigi with a dead chicken before. And Gigi is a three-legged dog. That dog hobbles. There is no way in tarnation ever that Gigi could kill a chicken, much less a goose. But that didn't come into your mind because when you suddenly are trying to solve a murder and 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 you just know that's her husband. That's her husband's favorite goose. He goes out and sings to that goose on the porch. Hand feeds that goose bread. And that goose loves bread. And that's homemade bread. So she immediately goes, which is the murderous dog that has gone off with this goose? And then she didn't want him to be wrongly accused. So she didn't want the dog to be wrongly accused. So that's a thoughtful accomplice, perhaps. So my sister goes through her whole day knowing that grandma will solve it, except she can't take it. She calls home at lunch. Now, my grandmother, she just is a doer. She has all my sister's kids in the house and all the other kids that are there. So she breathes no word because you know what? Children cannot be trusted in this conversation of a dead goose. So she does not tell anyone. My sister does not tell anyone. And I need you to keep this faith of do not tell my sister this whole story because it is so good. It is so good. 40 years I have kept this secret. And my grandmother then decides that she's going to pack up all those kids in their overalls. They all get their boots on and they all start looking. Now we have 48 acres. Now, for those of you who do not understand what 48 acres looks like, an acre is a football field is 1.3 acres. So 48 acres is like searching through 40 consecutive football fields. My sister has the truck. So she has to immediately kind of put a map in her mind that says, where would the dog take the goose? And how can I bury that goose and remove the evidence before the dog gets in trouble? And so we don't have to get Susan in trouble. And my sister was worried. She was worried that perhaps this would change her relationship with my grandfather because she was careless. She wasn't looking where she was going. She was in a hurry, and that cost somebody their life. And it was a mean goose, but that didn't matter because that wasn't mean to my grandfather. So my grandmother picks up all those kids. They all go out and they pretend they're fixing fence. They're just going to look for things. Tell me if you see the dogs. And the dogs, well, they weren't there. They were out doing what dogs do. So she didn't know which one of them had. But we have a farm. Now we have 40 head of cattle that we are 40 head that we are milking every morning. We have horses and chickens and geese and a pile of dogs and barn cats, and they're all my grandfather's pride and joy. But that goose was something special. You know, you don't hug a goose very often. And he and that goose had a special relationship. So off my grandmother goes all day. She comes home for lunch and the phone rings again. I don't know where that goose is. So my sister gets through the rest of her school day. She comes home. And then she starts looking for that goose. And none of the dogs looks real guilty, so we don't know who it was. So then dinner comes, the next day comes, no goose. Nothing shows up. So what do? They call me in the city to tell me what's happened, and perhaps I could give some insight. I sure don't know. I sure don't know. Nothing, not a word is breathed. Everyone has taken this secret in, and they're just waiting for the police to come in some sort of weird way. They're sure that a sheriff is going to come and accuse them of goose killing. Well, dinner comes, they go to bed the next day, they look around, and then my grandfather doesn't even notice. He doesn't say a word. They can't believe it. He didn't even notice the goose was gone. Day, and then it turns to a week, then it turns in, and I'm showing up. Now, several weeks has gone by. No one has mentioned the goose, and they are panged with guilt. And they just try to forget it. They keep waiting. They keep waiting. They kind of look out their shoulders to see if there's just some dog going to come with some wrangly neck of the goose or something. That your mind, the smarter that you are, makes up better stories. So time goes by. Time goes by. But the key to this story, and this is where you have to keep your heart in, the key to this story is the fifth G, right? The goose, the girl, the grandma, Gigi the dog who can't hobble to save her. She's not going to kill that goose. The fifth G is my grandfather. So my grandfather and I are very good friends. My grandfather and I are friends because he likes that I'm smart. Now, my grandfather is someone who has a traumatic brain injury. He is vet proud. He is small town proud. He is Canada proud. He played hockey, and that means he's got the fists, the fist of a Norwegian. He could slay Olaf himself, but he is a gentle heart. So my grandfather says, "Oh, I'm so glad you're here. Can you take a walk with me out to the barn? Because I got to talk to you about something that's been interesting to me." So there he is. There's where the goose was. This is where the murder happened. And right out past here, right where you can't see, is how you get to the milking pot. And there he is. Well, and my name was Little Bit. He says, "Little Bit, you're going to have to walk out to the barn with me. I need to process something with you. I need to tell you something." All right. So we walk, and he says, "Now, I haven't mentioned anything because I don't want to bring pain and suffering to everyone, but the darndest thing happened the other day. I was sitting on the porch, and I watched your sister pull out, hit the goose. I watched her pick up that goose and put it into the dog house and speed off as if nothing happened. And then I went and picked up that goose and buried it. And sure heck, as soon as I come back from burying that dog, my wife comes out and she starts looking in that dog house. And then she starts looking at these dogs. I thought she was going to murder the dog. And then my wife packs up all these little kids and they go out in the barn. They go out and search high and low. They just all leave. They all leave. And then no one brings it up. No one brings a word. No one says a thing about this goose. So I don't know what to do. And then he says, I love that goose. And I said, oh, well, I know you love that goose. And he says, I'm going to miss that goose. I said, yeah. He said, so I just don't know what to do. I said, well, I don't think there's nothing to do except hold that goose in your heart because that goose was for you. He says, I've never had a goose like that. No, you haven't. No, that is true. And he says, well, he said, I'll tell you the funniest thing about this as I've been thinking about this all these weeks. He goes, I'm getting old. And you know what? I noticed that I start to weave a little bit. He goes, I walk like a goose. And that's what I'm taking from all of this is I walk like a goose. And there it is. I have kept this secret to myself that the murderous thing that has happened, everyone knew, but no one was going to mention. So there's the body's already been buried. It's not who you think it is. So the next time you have a mystery on your farm, you might want to pay attention. The body might be already buried. And that's my story. Bye.